Welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to dive into a piece of history that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood screenplay. It's a true story that millions of people don't know, yet it absolutely stands as one of the most unbelievable survival stories in all of human history. We're looking at the life of Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and to really understand his story is to grapple with the sheer, almost mathematical impossibility. Out of the millions of people affected by the Second World War, we are tracking a man who defied every single statistical odds stacked against him.
Think about it for a second. What are the chances of surviving the deadliest weapon ever created? Even being a fraction of a mile from ground zero, the odds are virtually zero. Now, what are the chances of surviving it twice? It's a scenario so incredibly unlikely, your brain almost rejects the promise, right? You'd think there's no way. Yet, this isn't fiction. This actually happened. As we go through this explainer, you're going to see exactly how one man witnessed the unimaginable, not once, but twice, and lived long enough to tell the world exactly what he saw.
Okay, let's dive right into this. August 1945, an ordinary world and the first strike. To set the stage, we're going back to the summer of 1945 in Japan. The country is exhausted from years of brutal war, and families are living under the constant, suffocating fear of air raids. But among those millions of citizens, our focus is on Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He's 29 years old, he's a marine engineer working for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Notice what he is not. He is not a soldier fighting on the front lines. He is not a politician making grand wartime decisions. He is completely, utterly ordinary. Just a regular guy doing his job. In early August, he's in Hiroshima for what's supposed to be a very short, routine business trip. He plans to finish up and go home to his family in just a few days, having absolutely no idea that human history is about to fracture right in front of his eyes.
The contrast here is really what makes this so haunting. Imagine a perfectly calm morning. The sky is mostly clear, people are walking to work, kids are heading off to school, shops are opening up. It literally looks like any ordinary Monday. Tsutomu is just walking toward the shipyard. Then, a single American aircraft flies overhead. Moments later, that serene morning is instantly obliterated by a flash brighter than the sun. The aftermath is downright apocalyptic. Shattered buildings where homes just stood, widespread panic, screams, and then just a sudden deafening silence.
Let's focus on the visceral reality of that exact moment for Tsutomu. Before his brain could even process what that blinding light was, a massive shockwave slammed into his body. He was physically thrown several meters through the air. The sheer heat of the blast was so intense that it severely burned the skin on his arms and his face. His eardrums were badly damaged from the colossal pressure of the explosion. He's lying there in the rubble of a city that essentially just disappeared, covered in ash in absolute shock.
So the crucial point here is the scale of what just occurred. Between 70,000 and 80,000 people died almost instantly. Many thousands more would tragically succumb later from injuries and radiation. The world's very first atomic bomb used in war had just destroyed Hiroshima in the blink of an eye. The devastation is just beyond human comprehension. Yet in the midst of this unimaginable destruction, somehow Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived.
Which leads us to his next chapter, the impossible journey escaping to Nagasaki. Because despite severe burns and debilitating injuries, Tsutomu absolutely refused to give up. He needed to find a way home. Let's trace the frantic pace of his escape. He miraculously survives that first catastrophic blast. He spends a harrowing night in an emergency shelter surrounded by total devastation. The very next morning, August 9th, still incredibly weak, burned, and in deep physical pain, he manages to reach a railway station. And surprisingly, amidst all this chaos, some train lines are actually still operating. Driven by just an incredible will to return to his family, he manages to board a train. The resilience required to just take those steps is staggering.
His destination, Nagasaki. His wife and young son are waiting for him there. I want you to just imagine for a second, sitting on that train. Your body is covered in burns. Your ears can barely hear the rattle of the tracks. You've just watched an entire, bustling city disappear into smoke and ash. You think you're escaping the safety. You have absolutely no idea that you are heading directly back into the crosshairs, and that history has one more incredibly cruel surprise waiting for you. And that brings us to the second flash. Tragedy strikes again. Against all odds, Tsutomu actually makes it to Nagasaki, finally reunites with his family, and incredibly reports to work the very next morning. This is a moment that just stretches the limits of belief. When he tries to explain the unexplainable to his coworkers and his boss, describing a single bomb destroying an entire city in a flash, his boss reacts in pure disbelief. He says, "One bomb destroying everything?" It sounded absurd. The dramatic irony here is incredibly heavy, because literally as those words of disbelief were being spoken,
The clock strikes 11:02 a.m., and suddenly the room fills with another blinding flash. Another enormous, earth-shattering explosion shakes the city of Nagasaki to its core. The second atomic bomb had just been dropped. History was repeating itself in the most terrifying way imaginable. Just like days before, windows shattered, buildings collapsed into dust, and pure panic consumed the streets.
And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering, almost impossible reality of Tsutomu's story. Once again, against every conceivable law of probability, he survived. Out of the millions and millions of people swept up in the global tragedy of World War II, one ordinary man experienced the devastating power of both atomic bombings. He stood at ground zero of human history's most destructive moments, twice, and he lived through both of them.
Moving into our final chapter, A Voice for Peace, the legacy of Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Just a few days later, the war ended, Japan surrendered, and the entire world officially crossed the threshold into the nuclear age. For Tsutomu, surviving was really just the beginning of his post-war life.
So how did he process this? Well, step one. For years, he rarely spoke about what he'd experienced. The memories were simply too painful, too heavy to carry into everyday conversation. But step two is where his profound legacy really takes shape. As he grew older, he realized that keeping silent just wouldn't help future generations understand the reality of what happened. Which leads to step three. He completely transformed from a silent survivor into a vocal advocate. He began sharing his story globally, in schools, in interviews, and at international events. And he didn't do it for fame, not at all. He did it to ensure the world truly understood the devastating human cost of nuclear weapons. His lifelong dedication to truth and peace eventually received formal validation. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized Tsutomu Yamaguchi as a survivor of both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings. History formally acknowledged his unimaginable experience. He became a powerful, undeniable voice for peace, continuing his advocacy right up until he passed away the following year, in 2010, at the age of 93.
Which leaves us with this final thought. When people hear a story like this, a lot of them assume it must be exaggerated or even entirely fake. But history says otherwise. One ordinary man, two unimaginable disasters, and one incredible will to live. It proves that sometimes the most unbelievable stories aren't written by novelists, they're written by history itself. So, when humanity faces its darkest, most destructive moments, how enduring is the human will to survive and bring hope to the world? Tsutomu Yamaguchi's life gives us an answer we should absolutely never forget. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.